I'm Assistant Minister Randy Lewis, and I'm so excited to be with you in worship this morning. We have a special guest musician joining us today. Please help me welcome Ji Yangshim Anderson. Now, if this is your first time visiting us with us today, we have a special gift bag for you in the foyer. In fact, may I see the hands of those who are joining us here for the first time today? Welcome. Thank you. Please fill out the Connect card that's found in the pew back in front of you so we can stay in contact with you. Now, Reverend Robert Prose is our online minister today, so if you're joining us online, specifically Facebook or Zoom, please drop your prayer requests in the chat so that in a moment we can light a candle and hold space for you here in the sanctuary. And consider staying on for the coffee hour conversations immediately after the service. And if you're streaming or on Facebook, you're invited to join in the conversation as well. You can find the Zoom link on our webpage. Now, as Reverend Gerald comes to lead us in our invocation and covenant, please stand and remain standing while greeting one another in courageous love.
Church. This is indeed a day that God has made. Let us then rejoice in it and be glad. And let us count our many blessings. We are grateful for the capacity to see, hear, feel, and understand. We are grateful for the incredible gift of life. And we are especially grateful for the ties of love which bind us together, giving dignity, meaning, worth, and joy to all our days. Please join me in our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Welcome to All Souls, where we love beyond belief.
Our chalice is lit today by longtime member, Memorial Guild Chair, and volunteer usher, Kelly Jennings. Blessed is the fire that burns deep in the soul. It is the flame of the human spirit touched into being by the mystery of life. It is the fire of reason, the fire of compassion, the fire of community, the fire of justice, the fire of faith. It is the fire of love burning deep in the human heart, the divine glow in every life.
A story for you today about one of our forebears, Theodore Parker, called Theodore Parker Listened. Theodore Parker lived almost 200 years ago. And when he was about 4 years old, he found himself alone at the edge of a pond. He wasn't scared to be alone at such a young age because back then it was common for little kids to play by themselves. And Theodore stood looking at the pond,
He picked up a stick while he was walking there, and he still held it in his hand. And he spied a tiny turtle perched on a rock, sunning itself just a few feet away. And Theodore remembered times when he'd watched older children throw stones at birds and try and hit squirrels with sticks for fun. And Theodore raised his stick to strike the turtle, but something stopped him. It was like a voice inside said loud and clear, "It's wrong." And Theodore was surprised by this voice, surprised by these feelings, and he ran home to tell his mother what had happened. He said, "What was it that told me it was wrong?" And his mother put his arms around Theodore, and she said, "Some people call it your conscience. Some people call it the voice of God. If you listen and obey it, then it will speak clearer and clearer and always guide you right. But if you disobey it, then it will fade out little by little and leave you in the dark without a guide. Your life depends on heeding this voice." Theodore paid attention to what his mother said and continued to listen to his conscience. He became a Unitarian minister and a leading abolitionist who preached sermons, wrote letters to the president, and put himself at risk to protect escaped slaves. There were not many ministers, Unitarian or otherwise, who were as brave as Theodore Parker, who listened to their conscience and who tried not just to think the right thing, but to do the right thing, to work for freedom and fairness for all people. We each have the capacity to do good and to do evil. It's all in the choices that we make every day. We must listen to that still small voice inside of us and do what we know is right and good. That is one of the ways we can make the world a better place. I'd like to invite our children and youth to join me now on this Social Action Sunday, where we can find lots of ways to help our world be a better place.
And as G prepares to play, and thank you, David, for that music, we are continuing to honor and celebrate Women's History Month. And this piece is not only by a woman, but a living composer, which I thought was very important. And so please refer to that paragraph that explains it beautifully in the history of this piece. Thank you.
Today we honor the mystery and complexity of life. We acknowledge that life is never static and that change is the only permanent thing that we are presented with. But we feel thankful that we do not have to traverse this path of life alone. We are grateful for being a part of this community to share our lives' transitions, both joyful and painful. Today we light a candle for Sharon Harris, who's currently hospitalized. We light a candle for our worship assistant, Lee Rumley, and her mother, Laurel Turley, who's facing some health challenges. We light a candle for the proud grandparents, Rhonda and John Jacobs, on the birth of their new grandbaby, Penny Lynn. And from our online members and everywhere members. We light a candle in memory of Dick and Trish Leeser. From Italy, Giacomo Tesaro asked that we light a candle in remembrance of his mother who died a year ago. From Stacy Craig and family, please light a candle for friend Friedrich, who is hoping to make some big life changes. And prayers for healing for Garrett Gilbert, who's recovering from rib reconstruction surgery last week. Then we light a candle for Dennis Gordonier's health. I invite you now to name aloud someone you wish to be included in this sacred moment. We light a candle for all the precious names spoken and the ones that still remain in our hearts. Now, if you've lost a loved one in the past year, or if this Sunday is the closest to that loved one's anniversary, we invite you now to stand in memory for a brief moment of silence before the prayer. Gerald, you're on.
You may be seated. Please hear now this prayer. O gracious God, Spirit of life and love, we are gathered in this place at this moment. We are united, we are connected, we are part of each other, and we are thankful. Through all the hectic turns and twists in our lives, we are grateful to be in a place where we can feel the connection. And we also open ourselves to hear the still small voice, encouraging us, guiding us, giving us an opportunity where we maybe thought it wasn't. We're thankful that that still small voice resonates within us And we do not doubt, but we embrace all that you are calling us to be. We are ourselves, our unique human beings. Our souls are united, and we are so strong. Keep us then in this place of wisdom, allowing us to embrace others and to receive the blessings that you want us to have. We are praying this prayer because we know all things are possible through you, and with your holy name we pray. Amen. Blessed be. Ashe.
Wow, thank you. G, right? Did I say that right? It's the third part of the name is Shim, right? You ought to be ashamed of yourself for playing that well. That's very contemplative piece, and I could tell in the congregation, I could say you were just sort of thinking that non-lyrical music makes you create a picture of the sound that you're hearing. You become artists like the one who is leading you. And you've heard me say a number of times that the word music comes from the word muse, which means to think. To amuse is the opposite, which is to stop thinking. And we need to be able to do both. But when you hear these sounds and these echoes and the vibrations, you create lyrics or pictures or portraits. It stirs up memories, stirs up emotions, which is energy in motion. It can be very creative, and you could get depressed or you get very excited. You can have any number of emotions. And so when we worship together with the sound and the music and all the ambience, the candles, there's a certain rhythm to all the things that happen. And each of us find our own appreciation of each of those movements. Life itself has many moving parts, and we are part of the movement. So the older I get, the more I reconsider my life and what life really is. All of us are familiar a little bit more acutely than normal with a large number of deaths. I've done probably 4 funerals in as many weeks, memorial services. And when I can't be there, I'm making videos. And as I did a couple this week, to send to places I can't go, not always to officiate, but just to be present with people who are going. And a lot of them are my age, and which is contemporary. Of course, I've been called a bright young preacher all my life, but nobody says that anymore. They don't say bright or young, and some of them don't even say preacher no more. They say old, dark, old creature, not preacher. So those of you watching and listening, Sybil, there in Jamaica, bless you, precious. That's actually Mrs. Vince's sister. I just wanted to mention that because she likes my shirts. So anyway, that wasn't flirtatious. That's just acknowledgement of beauty that people see in their own eyes. Turn to the person next to you and say, I'm very happy to be sitting next to you today. Say, I love what you're wearing. Where in the world you find it? The theme for the month is spiritual authority. The word authority is a bit of an intimidating term because it suggests control outside yourself. But if you think of authority, authorship, authenticity, authorization, it has to do with you personally. So I'm not thinking of authority outside of myself. We do have rules and regulations, and there are things that need stipulations in life that we have to acknowledge. We learned that as children. The first authorities in our lives are our parents. And a lot of times we're resistant of that early on. We don't like to say it the old way, I don't like nobody telling me what to do. Nobody. We don't like to be told what to do. We don't mind the suggestions, and some people actually resist suggestions because it's somewhat intimidating. The Dalai Lama said the ultimate authority must always rest in the individual's own reason and critical analysis. The ultimate authority must always rest with the individual's own reason and critical analysis. We are all powerful and empowered to make choices and to decide what voices we're going to allow to influence us. I am who, what, and where I am in life and in the universe because of the voices and choices I've made throughout my life, as is the case with you. Think of the voices and the choices. First voice you remember probably is that of your mother's. Some of our mothers are gone. Mine's 93. She's not gone, but I can hear her voice all the time. And I hear her mother's voice, my grandmother, whom I loved. I was only 10 years old when she transitioned. She was 53 and had died of cancer. But I still remember how her house and her kitchen smelled. And I remember how she would sit at the sewing machine and create her own dresses on a Saturday night to wear to church on Sunday. I remember that she worked to clean homes in La Jolla and Point Loma. She actually had a 1958 Cadillac, but she never drove it to work. She had to look poor and sort of be poor. And she would sort of try to look like the maid. and that was a requirement. It was role playing, and how often, but at the church, she was called the church mother, which was the leading female presence in the church. And so, with her hats and her furs and her clothes, and she would put things on layaway if she couldn't afford it, But she looked the part, very dignified. That's the part of her I liked the most. She's a very elegant, quiet, dignified woman. And but I hear her, and her voice is not always a sound, it's a memory. And we're constantly influenced. Fluidity, there's a flow in life. And in that flow, we all swim. And we're all current or in the current. We don't just go with the flow, we grow with the flow, especially when the flow becomes a flood. And there's a lot of flooding all over in nature right now, but our lives are flooded with things, stuff. Every day we have to make choices. There's a scripture in the Psalms where it's called a Psalm of Exile, where the psalmists say, by the rivers of Babylon, or Babel, which is confusion, we sat and wept when we remembered Zion. When's the last time you had a memory that made you weep? By the rivers, now it was rivers of Babylon, or Babel, not just a pond or a lake. It was a flow of confusion, kind of like today, a constant flow of confusion. People don't know whether to trust an airline. Trains are jumping the tracks. We constantly hear these news about planes clipping each other. It seems like there's so much disorganization. Your phone has been acting crazy lately, hasn't it? You want to throw it out the window or throw it in some water. You turn the TV station on and the mouth is different from the sound or the picture. Or you turn to one station and it's the wrong station. It's like, what on earth is all this confusion? They wept, though, not because of being in exile or out in unfamiliar places. They wept because they remembered Zion. Hebrew, Zion, it means sign or significance. They remembered their essence. They remembered who they were. That's what made them weep. It was a sanctimonious, sacred, sacramental, sacrificial memory. Who are we essentially? And that's the voice we follow most. Outside choices and voices can make you very uncomfortable. But how does the inner voice make you feel? Are you comfortable with yourself, with your soul? The authorized, your authentic self is your authorized self. From some originator, most people say God, came you. I'm here on purpose, with purpose. I'm going to be celebrating my 70th birthday this time next week. I'll be in Atlanta speaking on the 19th, which is actually my birthday. And Mark Twain said the two most important days of your life, the day you're born and the day you realize why. The day you're born and the day you recognize why. Why the heaven or hell are you here? Why did we come here? What are you doing here? And what are you doing with your here and with your now? And who authorized your presence? Do you really feel like you're in exile, or do you feel at home? Or does the mood change based on the circumstance? Are you at home in yourself? Are you at home in your soul? Are you at home in your psyche? Are you comfortable being you? Sometimes we wrestle more with who we're not than with who we are. We're always wishing we were somebody else, or that somebody else was us, or like us. Most of us who are married, or you who are married, you wish your spouse was more like you and would think and stop disagreeing with you. You've heard me say many times, if two people have the same opinion about everything all the time, one of y'all ain't necessary. We need diversity. We need differentiation. We need choices. We need voices. And all of those things are working into, through, and as us all the time. Almost constantly, we're dealing with the part of ourselves that is most interesting and curious, or sometimes unknown. So I'm where I am. I'm here at All Souls because of choices I made. And a lot of the choices I made were against the system in which I was reared. A fundamentalist Christian, Pentecostal Christian, 4 generations, classical Pentecostal preacher. I have no business being here this morning, and yet I am. And it's been 17 years since we've been moving among people we didn't even think were saved. Anyway, Critical judgments you hear all your life. It's taken me 7 decades to rid myself of some of the luggage that I've been lugging and maybe in some strange way loving all these years. And I didn't even need it. Billions of dollars are spent on storage. When you have something in storage for 30 years, you don't even know it's there, and you've been paying thousands of dollars to keep it there. If you haven't seen it or tested it in 30 years, you probably don't even need it. But why do we hang on to stuff? What is the we find a certain significance in things. I do. Memories, things that I nurture at the breast of my own soul, of my own psyche. So now I'm into radical inclusion, expanded consciousness, the so-called theological crisis I went through and survived as a result of hearing voices in my head that said, you may have gotten it wrong, preacher. Maybe heaven and hell are not like you were taught or like you thought. Maybe you Christians aren't the only ones right. You might be the only one wrong. Maybe there is no literal hell where your grandmother, whom I thought was going to be weeping, wailing, and gnashing of teeth the rest of her life, and where so many of my cousins and friends and members of my family and backslidden Christian, I was constantly dealing with guilt and shame and fear and anger, and I didn't even know it. I was standing in the pulpit thinking I'm anointed, and I was just annoyed. Many preachers think they're anointed, and they're really just annoyed. We're angry about stuff. What if I got it wrong? What if I thought it wrong? Because thoughts are authoritative as well. What you think about, you bring about. What do you think about? What you feel. How are you feeling and why are you feeling? I'm approaching, the 7 decades, so I'm supposed to be old, and I keep telling myself that I have the right to be older. I have the authority. I've earned that pain. I've earned that lower back pain. So where do these pains come from? There's just little creepy things. I've never scratched there before. I've never thought about how can your inside of your elbow itch? Where did that bone come from? Sometimes I lose a little bit. I like to cook, so sometimes I can't taste anything but salt or sugar. And I'm cooking by rote. And people tell me my food is still good, but I don't believe it's good unless I can taste it. But I don't measure anything. My grandmother didn't measure anything. You just put stuff in there. You go by feelings. I authorize myself in the kitchen. And I hear voices and make choices in the kitchen. And when I love going in the kitchen because every time I go in there, my grandmother shows up. She's been gone since 1964. My aunt, who was 92, all the people that influenced me as a kid, I hear them, I feel them, I sense their presence, and I can hear them say, put a little paint, baby, of that. Don't warm that. My aunt wouldn't say warm. She said, just warm it. Warm it a little bit. Heat it up a little bit. I can hear their voices. It's like they're still here with me. How many of you know what I'm talking about? These are memories, and you're collecting around them, and they authorize your presence on the planet. When you start feeling strange or a stranger, you start calling back in the things or memories or people or voices and choices that make you feel secure. We all want to feel secure. We all want to be here on purpose. People often ask me, when and why did I change my mind? I really didn't change my mind. My mind changed me. My mind reauthorized me, gave me permission to be independent. Sometimes codependent, or interdependent, or just dependent. But most of us like to be independent. My daughter, Majesty, when she was a baby, she's still very independent, but at 2 and 3 years old, I'd be trying to help her do something, and she said, undo it myself, undo it myself, undo it myself. She's still doing it herself. And I'm a pretty smart daddy, and she does not listen to, but I remember I went through my phase when I heard you, but I didn't listen. I didn't list. That's what the word means, to list what somebody said. To listen. You're listing it on your brain. How many people have influenced you, even today? You're here, who influenced your coming? The person you're sitting near, or Did somebody call you? Or did you just wake up this morning and say, you know what, I'm going to go to church. I'm going to go to All Souls. I don't know who's there. I don't know what's going on. But when I go to church, I go to All Souls. So I'm going this morning. We have people listening from all over the world. Some are in a totally different time zone. But they get up for this service or the next one. Or we archive our services, of course, so you can go online and hear them when you want to. So that's why I wonder why you're here this morning. You didn't have to come. What choice? Who made that choice for you? You made it. You are powerful to make a choice. And the choice was guided by a voice. The Greek renderings of the word voice is phone, from where we get the English word phonics. The voice of God, of the gods, or the voice of good, or the voice and choice of evil. These are phonics, phonetics. They're alphabets and vowels and consonants. It's really the lyrics and language of the soul. There was a language of the psyche. You're constantly carrying on a conversation, first with yourself. In fact, while I'm speaking, I'm saying these words, you're hearing them, but you're also carrying on 10 other conversations about what I say with yourself. Or something you heard that's different from what I'm saying, that made a little sense. Of course, mine makes more sense than what the other one made, so, at least for the next few minutes. And then it won't make sense when you go home. Or will you remember what we talked about at all? Because thoughts are things. And thoughts are conscious of themselves. Consciousness is conscious of itself. Everything is aware. Even in Scripture, when Jesus is reported to have said to Nicodemus, who came to him by night, saying, Master, we know you are a teacher sent from God because nobody could do these miracles. Then Jesus looks back at him, according to the narrative, and says, dude, you must be born again. Because you wouldn't have recognized who I am if you didn't have some kind of an awakening. And Nicodemus said, born again? What do you mean by that? Going to my mother's womb a second time. The word again in the Greek Septuagint is anothen, English word another, ether. An ethereal, transcendent moment made you aware of who you are. That's what I believe being born again is. It isn't coming down here confessing a few words after some preacher, which I've done and led thousands to do, but you're the same person until you've had the awakening. Until you've been alerted, not alarmed, alerted to who you are and who you aren't. Most of us spend our lives impersonating who we think people want us to be and never get to know our authentic selves, authored self, authorized self. We let life edit us, or wife or husband edit us, children edit us, or sometimes we edit ourselves, and you're free to do that. But who is the authorized, original you before you started impersonating who you think people want you to be? Most of us act like imposters habitually, even to ourselves. We tell ourselves something we know we don't believe about ourselves. Or we tell ourselves something we believe ourselves about ourselves, but we don't know it's true. At this stage of my life, I'm wrestling between what my soul and my cells know. It seems like they have a memory, some kind of a deja vu of a past reality in a pre-incarnate reality, as Jeremiah describes his conversation with God, where God says, before I formed you, I knew you. Not before I informed you, but before I formed you. I think we came here from wherever we come from, knowing, and you've heard me say between the womb and the tomb, we go through this spiritual amnesia, and we forget what we know and start believing what we're told, and that's where we get confused. What do you really know about you? Not just what you believe about you, but what do you know about you, if you know anything at all? Some of you would say, well, the one thing I really know is that I don't know much. We always say, well, I don't know everything. Do you know anything? Don't worry about the everything. What is the anything you know? And do you actually believe what you know? Conscience, remember conscience. Science means knowledge. Conscience, with knowledge. Knowledge transcends faith. Faith will lock you down and lock you out. But when you know, I don't have to convince you. Faith is for people who doubt. I only need doubt when I'm insecure, faith when I'm insecure. I need faith when I can't remember. I need faith when I'm struggling, when I'm trying to find myself. But once you find the location, you locate yourself, you're okay. Then work and walk out the knowledge. So you are the primary spiritual authority in your life. We preachers aren't. We may have some religious authority, but we don't have any spiritual authority over you. Only you do. That is your essence. When I say essence, that's the permanent rather than accidental you. Accidents don't happen by choice. They happen by chance. You don't choose an accident. So I don't want to know who your chance person is. I want to know who your choice person is. Who do you choose to be? What are the phonetics of your soul? What is the lyrics of your spirit? What is the language of consciousness? Do you write it? Do you read it? Do you hear it? Do you speak it? Do you walk it? And how many languages? And do you interpret them accurately? There's translation and transliteration. Transliteration is you translate the letters. Even Scripture says the letter or literal kills. Spirit gives life. So what is the alphabet of your soul? How do you spell you? What are the consonants and vowels of who you are? I remember learning, Frankie Spaulding was my fourth grade teacher. I learned more about reading from her. My dad didn't read well. Dad was okay, but he had dyslexia, and we didn't know that. But I would take the blackboard at home and teach my dad with Frankie Spaulding, who came from Missouri, and when she retired, she actually came to ORU where I was leading singing one time. I found out she was there, and I just ran from the stage all the way up. It just gave her the biggest hug, because she gave me more attention than anybody in elementary school. I was one of the few little black kids in that school, and she knew I was not really lonely, but a little bit lonesome, and so she was very sensitive to what I needed. And I loved her so dearly. And she took me aside and she spent time with me and the vowels and the consonants. And I put them, the A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes what? Y'all about my age. They didn't always say sometimes why. I don't know when they started saying the A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes why. I said that to my dad. My dad said, I learned more, son, in the 30 minutes you've been talking to me than I did in my whole life about reading. And I said, thanks to Mrs. Frankie Spaulding. She was like guided into my life. I make my living talking, preaching, reaching, screaming. All my life, my voice has been my choice. And I hear a lot more than I say. I'm listening constantly. I don't just listen to God, I listen for divinity. I'll find it haphazardly in a conversation with you. I was painting pictures while you were playing this morning. I was just thinking of the first song had a little bit more staccato and a little beat and rhythm to it, almost percussion-like, because you were doing things with the instrument that sounded like a drum. And then the last one, you played through the musings. It's called the science of the musings. And I noticed that a different kind of energy, because you were not trying to figure it out, but you were making a nod with the bump and the sound and the rhythm, and how is she doing that? I wasn't asking it on the second song, I was saying, how does she do that? How does she make that sound? You were your own percussion. You were like a band on the first song. I'm that way in my life. Sometimes I'm the percussion, I'm the keyboards, I'm the electric guitar, I'm the air that's breathed through the instrument that makes the sound. Just if you have a wind or instrument or a brass, you have to blow into it, and your breath makes a sound. We know it has its own smell, but it makes a sound. Your breath can make a sound. Sometimes just talking to you, I can hear the sound. I said when America had to wear masks, now we realize why people were offering us gum all the time. We had to smell our own breath. We weren't used to doing it. It's like, wow, I was offering myself gum, after I put those masks on. The breathing, that's the essence of who you are. That's your permanent self. That's the infinite. unfinishable, unfinished, uncompletable you. The infinite, that means you go on forever. We'll put our bodies in the graves. We'll put our ashes maybe behind in the tree there behind us. But your essence, your spirit remains, even if only in somebody's memory. You never really go away. As you evolve, you dissolve. You are authorized to do all of that. Now just lift your hands and shift the energy around as I close. Just do like this a little bit. That's... You take a good stretch. You're still incarnated or incarcerated in that body. But at some point, they'll send an email out and say that you left us. And somebody will be embalmed and the body will go back to the dust. But the memory and the kind things people will say about you will live long. What were you leaving the earth? We'll know you came through. Your fingerprints, your faith prints, maybe your footprints will be on us. Because you came here by authorization. Turn to somebody and say, I'm here on purpose. I have permission to be here. And I'm committed to being here until I'm done. You know why you're not dead? Because you're not done. When you get done, you transition to the next ether, your next iteration. I love you. I believe in you. I respect your essence and presence in the earth. You're powerful. You're magnificent. And you are magic. Peace and blessing to you all.
Would you repeat these words after me? You've got to do.
You've got to do
When the Spirit says do.
When the Spirit says do.
When the Spirit says do.
what the Spirit says do.
You've got to do, O Lord.
You've got to do, O Lord.
You've got to do when the Spirit says do.
You've got to do when the Spirit
In a
says
moment, I'm going to ask you to help me sing those words. Goes like this. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you've got to do, oh Lord. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. You want to sing it with me? You've got to do when the Spirit says do. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you've got to do, oh Lord. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. You ready, Rick?
Yep. I'm with you.
Let's sing it with a beat now. Here we go. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. There you go. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you've got to do, oh Lord. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. Now you're welcome to stand if you want and sing that together. Come on. You've got to do. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do, oh Lord. You got to do when the Spirit says do. Some of you are already doing the next one. You've got to clap when the Spirit says clap. How about that? You got to clap when the Spirit says clap. Let me hear you, yeah. You got to clap when the Spirit says clap. When the Spirit says clap, you've got to clap, oh Lord. You've got to clap when the Spirit... Let's clap together, come on, like this. Oh, I love it. That's beautiful. You've got to sing, come on. You've got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You've got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you got to sing, oh Lord. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. All right, let's put it all together now. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. Let me hear you. You got to do when
The
the
Spirit says do.
I love those voices. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you've got to do, oh Lord. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. Yeah. Thank you. You may be seated.
Yes, yes, yes. Almost had me want to break dance.
Are you ready to dance, huh?
Yes. Hey, this wonderful message, Minister Carlton. Wow, powerful message. Thank you, thank you. Yes. Now, every week at All Souls, we give away our offering plate to an organization doing the work of love, justice, and care in our community. Today's offering goes to Women's Foreign Policy Group, support for Iranian women. The Women's Foreign Policy Group advances women's leadership in international affairs and amplifies their voices through substantive global issue discussions and mentoring. They work tirelessly to expand the foreign policy dialogue across political divides and generations and to support women at every stage of their careers. So when the offering plate comes around, please give generously. But I do have a few announcements. Now, Wednesday's Connections will return on the 22nd. So while we will not be having services, Connections this Wednesday, we will be having our sustainability team, which is a newly formed team. We will be meeting at 5:30 this Wednesday, and we will have salad and hors d'oeuvres, and you're all welcome to come out, and you can bring a food or finger food to share if you like. Now, today is Joining Sunday. We ask an opportunity to meet. It's our Joining Sunday, and it's going to be at 11:30 and 1. It's an opportunity to meet with an All Souls minister, ask questions, connect with others who are joining, and become a member of the church. And Reverend Barber will be online and will be leading those two sessions. Next, the March 26th it is, Heritage Sunday. It is happening right here at the church, and it is the birthday of the church, and we'll be celebrating 102 years, everybody, 102 years. March the 26th. Give it up, come on. We'll have two festival services at 10 and 11:30 with performances from our choirs and a reception in Emerson Hall. Come connect with your family, your church family. Child care will be available for children from kindergarten and younger. Now, he already let the cat out the bag, but next Sunday, the 19th, is Minister Carlton Pearson's 70th birthday, right? Sitting there looking 50s. 50-something. Looking younger than I am. But we wanted, at this time, because he's not going to be here next week, to sing a little happy birthday, all right?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Carlton. Happy birthday to you.
Yes. So this concludes our announcements. Please check your order of service for additional announcements. Now let us receive your most generous offering. Yes, beautiful. Thank you for those who've joined us online and here in the service as well. If you're online, please stay for our coffee hour conversations immediately after the service. Now, for all the first-time visitors, make sure you get your gift bag out there in the foyer. And please, you all are welcome to join us for coffee and conversation and visit our big bookstore in the Alliance Room. And now, as Minister Carlton comes to give the benediction, let us extinguish our chalice, not the flame, but may the flame remain in our hearts.
I would close by encouraging you, as I'm doing myself, to ask yourself repeatedly until you get an answer, what do you know about you? And how does what you know about you add to or subtract from the quality of how you experience you? And then make the necessary adjustments. You're very special or you wouldn't be here. And we're here, I think, by invitation, that we've been invited into this plane or planet, that we call it a planet, but it's a plane of consciousness that we all live on. And expand that consciousness and just see how rich and how powerful you really are. And then send us a letter and tell us that you love us. We love you. Peace and blessing. Thank you, right?